Hare Krishna Prabhu. Welcome all for this today's session. Today is day 4 session. Today is a topic on functions of landscape. So we will begin the session with the invocation prayers. Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namini Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatideshakarini Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasari Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Om Shurabhyai Namaha. Hare Krishna. Welcome. Yeah. So yeah. So we'll begin the session now. Like we will have, we will just recap the yesterday's topic, like which was given by our Dr. Sri Kumar Prabhu about the functions of the plants. Like in the previous, like in the yesterday's topic, Sri Kumar Prabhu was mentioning about what is that actual context of that yesterday's presentation. Like Prabhu, he very elaborately explained that elaborately explained about of course every one of us in this planet, we want stable families and living peaceful lives and prosperity and physical security and even to pursue our own spiritual and religious beliefs. We want adequate nutritious food, clean water, and we want that real education that ensures the real wealth and health and all these things. So Prabhu also further explained what is that actual ecosystem literacy. That means ecosystem literacy means to understand from the land what Bhumata, what she is trying to tell you to do. Okay, and every one of us, even myself, like we owning a farm, but actually, like we are managing ecosystem in which we are we are a being also into that. So many of us are practicing this natural farming and the organic farming, and what it is all about. Like what is that organic movement, how it is built on. Prabhu explained that organic movement is built on its about the birthright of all the living things is health. So, and at the same time, this organic movement, this law is true for soil, plant, animal, and man. So the health of these four is one. It is like a connected chain. If any weakness in any one of that, like in soil, plant, and animal, and when it breaks, ultimately man has to suffer. So like that. Prabhu also further explained about the soil life. Like in the soil, how many microbes will be there. Like Prabhu explained that it has like 1 billion of soil microbes are present in 1 tablespoon of soil. So what are the consequences like of leaving the land bare? If we leave our land bare, then it is very hungry, thirsty, and with it is like a high fever as its soil gets heated up. When if it is like she is like so much exposed to the direct sunlight, it will, if you measure the land with a thermometer, it will show you in the on the bare land, it will go up to like 70 to 80 degrees. Okay, when such poorly managed landscape ultimately which is leading to actually hunger and floods and malnutrition and what's on, like there are many other consequences we are facing now. So to avoid all these consequences, like how to make dirt into soil. So how is that possible? So Prabhu said that it is only possible by the photosynthesis process, where in that which the soil can live and become more fertile. So the photosynthetic, the photosynthetic capacity of the soil and the photosynthetic rate influences how the soil will build. And yesterday we had also understood the in that videos the source of all nutrients, how this roots and all, it's connecting, and how they are releasing the protein and so many other things. So Prabhu also explained there are like two differentiates, like photosynthetic capacity and the photosynthetic rate. The photosynthetic capacity means that how much that light intercepted which by the green leaves in a given area, that is called photosynthetic capacity. And the rate which plants are able to convert the light energy into the sugars is called photosynthetic rate. So without this photosynthesis, there is no soil at all. Even in that one slide, Prabhu is showing how in the international markets, how they are selling the fruits, like with the, they are selling by measuring that, what is that, with that refractometer, the sugar levels, bricks levels. Yes. So now, we want that quality of food. That means we need that how much we have drawn that sugar. That is the most important thing. So, and at the same time, Prabhu also showed many in the few videos that how we should facilitate that carbon pump to feed the soil life. And also, what is it? The water capacity in the land, like 1% increase, at least 1% is enough. If we just increase 1% of organic matter, it stores like 94,000 liters of water per acre. Okay, that means 24 liters per square meter. Okay, so now in continuation, like today's topic called the functions of the landscape. So in this, we are the speakers are going to discuss of the 4 ecosystem process. That is mineral cycle, water cycle, solar energy flow, and the community dynamics. Now today, like we have special speakers today. We welcome our Abhishek Prabhu, Ajit Prabhu, and our Vishnunam Prabhu. So Ajit Prabhu, Abhishek Prabhu, they both are serving in Agarwal Organic Farm, which is practically they are practicing on ground by following this holistic management principles at Jaipur Farm. So they are they are practical doing, they are serving the functions of land and cows there. So they will share their experiences also in this talk. In this, they will present their topics. So our Vishnunam Prabhu is a minister for cow ministry in ISKCON. So he will present the last topic of the community dynamics. So I would request Dr. Sri Kumar Prabhu, please take up the session, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you for giving a good backup of what was the topic that was discussed yesterday. Shall I share the screen, Prabhu?
Yes, Prabhu, please. I will just unlock 1 minute. Yes, you can share, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. So today's topic is the function of landscapes. In the introduction class, that is on the second day, we found that there is a what we need to understand is the function of each of the beings that are living with us. And first day we understood what's the function of a farmer. Yesterday we understood what is the function of a plant. And today we will look into what is the function of the landscape we are managing. So we would, just to remind you the context for this presentation, Vastama Prabhu told about this. I'm not reading it, but I hope you remember that we want stable families and we need to behave in a particular way to get the stable families, all to be ensured for many generations to come on a foundation of ethical and humane behavior to all life, regenerating soils, biologically diverse communities on the earth's land and in our rivers, lakes, and ocean. That is when we can get this context achieved. And we understood that the problems or any disease that is happening, that we are facing, is actually, it is not caused by any of the resources or the beings that are living with us. It is actually caused by the decision we have taken. And all our decisions are influenced by the paradigms we hold. And then we looked into various paradigms that are governing or influencing our decisions. And now in this presentation, the paradigm is the Vedic paradigm, that is Om Purnamada Purnamidam. That is in each, the personality of God is perfect, and what he has created is also perfect. And the highlights of this paradigm is that it is entropic, that the more you grow, the more fertile it becomes. Increasing population doesn't deplete the resources in the ecosystem. The resources are available at the site, no need for any inventions. No difference between farm and farmer, as we are a being in the farm. There are no parts in nature. Each species is something that is simultaneously whole in and of itself, as well as a part of the larger whole. The whole is more than the sum of the parts. These are the highlights of this paradigm. So based on this paradigm should be influencing the decisions we take for the farm. And by, we say, today is also the celebrated as the Mother's Day. And from Chanakya Pandit's Arthashastra, we come to know that once we have 7 mothers, and they are one's own mother, the wife of the Guru, the wife of a Brahmana, the wife of a king, the cow, the nurse, and the earth are known as the 7 mothers of man. So of these 7 mothers, 5 are human beings, and only 2 are not non-human beings. That is the Mother Earth and the Mother Cow. And in the first session, we understood what the mother cow needs. She needs an owner who doesn't separate her from her calf and doesn't separate her from performing her functions of grazing. So that is what the mother cow needs. Now in this session, we will look into what the Mother Earth needs, so that we can keep serving her for us to achieve the context we are looking for. So how to gauge the health of the soil, how to gauge the health of the Mother Earth? We need an understanding of the 4 basic ecosystem services that work in all ecosystems. And only when these 4 ecosystem services are functioning in a farm, then only we will be getting the real milk, the real grains, the real vegetables, fruits, and real water. The real nutritious food only can come only from a landscape where these 4 ecosystem functions are in place. It is these 4 ecosystem services that a farmer should harvest. You see, in that ice cream, you have the cherry on top. That is the quality of life that we want to achieve. And the other creams or the other things that are holding the cherry on top has to be with integrity. And if when you purchase such a thing, if it is leaking, we will not purchase. No, it has to be, there should be an integrity. So what are the 4 things? The water cycle, the mineral cycle, the solar energy flow, and the community dynamics. And when these 4 are in place only, we will get a quality life. So the 4 ecosystem processes are, as mentioned, they are just 4 windows into the same room. That is, just imagine a room which has 4 walls on east, west, south, north. And then there is a window on 3 and there is a door on the 4th side. So it is like looking into the same room through different windows. So what we decided today is, there are 4 speakers today. And myself, after me comes in order, it is Abhishek Prabhu, and then Ajit Prabhu comes, and then finally Vasudamat Prabhu comes. I'll be looking to the window and I'll be
Sorry,
saying,
Vishwanam Prabhu.
Vishnu Prabhu, sorry, Vishnu Prabhu will be the 4th. So what I will be seeing, I'll be saying, and each person will say what he is seeing through the window. I told you we are describing the same room, but we are having 4 things that we are understanding. So all the decisions we make to manage our landscape should be in favor of these 4 services. That is, our decision making should be such that these 4, when you want to check whether your decision is in line with the paradigm or in line with the context we have framed, just need to see whether your decision is in any way affecting these 4 ecosystem processes. Then actually you have to reach a plan, whatever you are going to do. So my window, through my window, what I am seeing is the energy flow. The energy flow is how much of the sunlight that falls on your landscape have we harvested. Yesterday we studied on the photosynthesis. So now we are looking that, whatever, if I'm managing 1 acre of land, 10 acre of land, or 100 acres of land, whatever sunlight falls on my area, whether it is 1, 2, or 10, or 100 acres, how much am I harvesting? Am I spilling any of the sunlight? That is what energy flow means. The basis of all life depends on the plant's ability through photosynthesis to convert sunlight energy to edible form. So does every economy, every country, and civilization. Higher energy flow means least spillage of sunlight. Spillage means you know that somewhere the light has spilled and it didn't get caught by a leaf that was there. Even though we have hundreds of species of plants, we missed a ray of light. That is what meant by spillage. So we have umpty number of plants, umpty number of shapes, and architecture is there. They are all ready, and you should orchestrate them so that we don't miss any sunlight. And yesterday, just to recap, I will just put this video again so that you shouldn't forget the function of all.
Plants, with sunlight and water, perform photosynthesis. They pull in carbon from the air and turn it into carbohydrates, sugars. Then they pump some of those sugars down through their roots to feed microorganisms who use that carbon to build soil. Voila, carbon moved. Plants pump it in and soil stores it. Nature's living technology is amazing.
So,
Plants.
Then we came that photosynthetic capacity of the land. The photosynthetic capacity is the amount of light intercepted by the green leaves in your area. Number 2, not just how much has been intercepted. How did you intercept? Did you intercept with different types of architecture of leaves? Not just one type, different biodiverse types of leaves. How many types of leaves you have used to harvest that leaves, and how much time you have harvested. Throughout the year you should harvest. That is what the photosynthetic capacity means. And the photosynthetic rate is how quick, how efficiently your plant is taking the photosynthesis and pumping the carbon. And this photosynthetic rate is dependent on these 4 ecosystem processes. Only when these 4 ecosystem processes are functioning, the photosynthetic rate will happen fast. I have got a power failure here. I hope it will come soon. In any case, the power doesn't come and that disconnection is there. Either of the 3, of someone should continue the topics, because
I will request Srikala Mataji.
Yeah, in that case, be ready with the PPTs if it goes.
Yes, yes,
now,
yes.
I don't know, maybe it could go for 2-3 minutes. Let us see.
Yes.
So then comes the sun's radiation. When it comes from the sun, it has 4. It falls on the leaf. When it falls on the leaf, the photosynthesis takes place, and the liquid carbon pump and everything happens. But when it is falling say that if the solar radiation cannot be absorbed by plants and used in photosynthesis, it is absorbed by the ground or reflected back into the atmosphere, creating heat vortices. That is, it can be transformed into photosynthesis by plants, or it can be transformed into evaporation. That is, when it hits the ground, it can get heated up and the water can get evaporated. And even if, or it can get into heat, and wherever it falls, it gets heated up and it will also reflect. So it will increase the heat, the temperature of where it falls. And so your room temperature, everything starts to get increased. If you are spilling the sunlight, this is what will happen. So plants promote soil life by keeping the soil temperature favorable for plant growth, retaining water, biological activity, etc. And so from this chart, you can see that when the soil temperature is 21 degrees centigrade, 100% moisture is used for growth. And when it, due to spillage, somehow if the sun rays hits the ground and the temperature increases to 38 degrees centigrade, then the 15% of the moisture is used for growth. You'll get only 50% of the moisture that can be used for growth. Just 85% is lost through evaporation and transpiration. And if it has increased further into 54 degrees centigrade, 100% moisture is lost through evaporation and transpiration. And when it is 60 degrees centigrade, the soil bacteria death. In the soil life is, you will not have the soil life to perform. So vegetated landscapes are cooling off and hydrating the soil, whereas unvegetated landscapes are heating up and drying out. And I'll show you some videos here. Just see the first video. The temperature of the cement floor is taken. It is 52 degrees centigrade. And then immediately near to that, there is some plants growing. See, it is 33 degrees centigrade. And again, when it comes to this, it is 51, 52 degrees centigrade. Just some leaf, if it is there, a living leaf is there, see the temperature difference. That means it's exothermic. The soil gets heated up. But see, this is a bare soil, that is tar road, and that is 56 degrees centigrade. And the bare soil, it is the same. See, 50, 51, 52 degrees centigrade. The bare soil and the tar road is more or less getting heated up. You saw in that chart, it is 54, there is no water, and it can even lead to absence of soil life. That is photosynthesis, whereas photosynthesis is endothermic. It is cooling. When it falls on the bare soil, it is heating up. And see here what is happening is the tar road and a tree leaf. I'm just showing it is 51, and then I'm putting it on a tree leaf that is coming up. It has come to 33. And as the time, maybe at 12 o'clock, this is at 1 o'clock. So as the time changes also, what happens is the temperature of the soil or the bare soil or the concrete will increase, but the temperature on the leaf will remain the same. That is the advantage of this. So that means it can even cook that much temperature. It can even go up to 70, 72 degrees centigrade, but the temperature on the leaf will be same. So actually, this temperature increase will cause an atmospheric temperature to increase. So what is it that is the cause for heat in the atmosphere? It is not because we don't have a fan or an air cooler or air conditioner. It is because we don't have a living plant on the landscape. That is why the soil temperature is increasing. If you are able to bring living plants all around, that is what the Mother Earth wants. She doesn't want us to suffer, all the soil life to suffer. So what she wants is living plants all over. So vegetated landscapes are cooling off and hydrating the soil, whereas unvegetated landscapes are heating up and drying out. So how to capture more sunshine? Add more green growing leaves, more plants, bigger leaves, plants actively growing, diversity of canopy and plants. Have green leaves for more days, 365 days we should have. Have leaves from as early in possible in spring to late fall, diversity of plants. Then that is how we can capture this. So it is the photosynthetic capacity and photosynthetic rate, not the biomass, that drives the sequestration of carbon in the soil. Through the biomass also, through the decomposition pathway, there is a soil building, but the major part is through the photosynthesis process. So you can see on the right side, carbon, water, everything gets filled there. That is how it has to be. Diversity, diverse types of leaf is what the plant. So this a living leaf is through which we can harvest the sunlight. So this is what solar energy flow means. No bare soil, a must in cropping to avoid spillage of sunlight. Our cropland should be harvesting at least 200 to 300 different types of sugars produced by different types of plant leaves, not just one. Just imagine an acre of land can have, if it is permitted, 200 to 300 species of plants can be doing. We have, by being a human doing, we have reduced it to one. That is the monocropping. That shouldn't be the way. Manage the diversity and don't sweat the weeds. Weeds are also performing. We shouldn't call them. Every plant is performing the same function. So we should permit all plants to grow and all different types of the nutrients should be pumped into the soil so that the energy flow is better and the crop that you get is full of nutrients. So this is what I have seen in the room through the window I saw. Now I pass on the baton to Abhishek Prabhu to speak on what he is seeing through the window that he is managing. Welcome, Abhishek Prabhu. Abhishek Prabhu. Abhishek Prabhu. Yes.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you, Dr. Am I audible?
You're audible,
Hello?
but there is some.
Yes, it is audible, Prabhu, but your voice is little bit of
Am I
breaking.
audible? Yeah. Yeah. So, voice is breaking.
Yeah, breaking is.
Maybe some system.
Yes, yes. Carry on.
Now is it fine, bro?
Yes, Prabhu.
Or still it's breaking?
No, no, no.
Okay. So, is it breaking now also?
No, no, carry on.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Srikumarji, for passing on the baton. And as you rightly said, so I will be opening the second window of the same room, that is water cycle. And in Google search certain keywords. So in this particular site, in this slide, you see it says water cycle, how much rain have you harvested. And though it says that can you show the below button?
It's there. We can see.
Doctor?
It is there. We can see in the screen.
Yes, yes, we can see in the screen, Prabhu.
Okay.
We can see.
Okay. Okay. Below it says efficient water cycle means least spillage of rainwater. So in this slide, there are words like spillage, harvested, and efficient. So if we try to understand it, like in case, let's say an example, when in temple we are served some liquid sweet rice, kheer or payasam, whatever name it's known as, we create a nice bend in our palm so that there is no spillage, the entire can be harvested or swallowed inside the mouth. So similarly, if we see, like if we want to quench our thirst from water, like what generally people say during dry seasons, like the earth needs to quench its thirst. So similarly, if we take water, close our mouth and directly spill on our head, our thirst won't be quenched. There is a proper procedure to drink the water through the mouth, and eventually it will leave the body either through sweating or through urination. So same way, whatever rainwater falls on the soil, it needs to be absorbed, it needs to be soaked, it needs to be retained in the soil itself, and it should leave the soil only by transpiration through the trees, which is the equivalent of sweating in our case, and through through underground springs, and in that case the spillage would be surface evaporation and simple runoff of water from the surface. Now effective rainfall and effective water cycle are synonymous to one another. I'll just read from the slide. Like effective rainfall, it is the rain that falls on the surface of the soil, soaks in, and then leaves the soil only by two ways. First is by soil, perennial flows, underground water, reservoirs, and second is by transpiration through green growing plants. In this particular case, if we miss proper harvesting of the rainwater, then we have to wait for the entire next year for the rains to come. So proper harvesting, proper irrigation, and proper absorption of the soil, of the water in the soil is very much required. Next slide. So in this slide, we'll see the effective rainfall. We do not have
So really the aim of what we're doing is trying to make the available rainfall more effective. We're out in the rain right now, and you can see it. Where the soil is bare, this water is flowing and it's depositing silt or carrying silt, depositing it down there.
Because there is life.
Where the grassland is, where we've got grass plants growing and some litter, there's absolutely no water flowing. This is all just soaking in, and that's what we've got to get. And then that water should only leave the soil through growing plants or underground flow in the water to aquifers and in the soil to aquifers and the river.
So as seen in this video, actually the soil life in the soil form lumps and holds together the soil particle, so it doesn't allow the runoff of water through it. Yes, next slide. Next. So as discussed in the first slide, the water should only leave the soil as underground springs. So springs, although they are rare to be seen in present context, but they are considered to be the purest form of water. So springs form when the rainfall is effective. They can come back if the rainfall is made effective, and as we can see, the water in the spring is absolutely clear. There is no dirt, no mud involved in it.
I am not receiving
so
value.
It is not carrying any. Who has blocked this view?
No, I think so.
Next slide.
Sir, voice is breaking, sir. Voice is breaking.
Voice is good. Some
So,
connection problems.
Prabhu, can you take it from here? Maybe
Okay,
some
okay,
technical
okay.
issue with the system.
Okay, then I'll take over. So, thank you, Abhishek Prabhu. Hope the connection will get okay. So, the condition of the soil surface and what's growing on it controls the fate of the rainfall. That is, you need a living plant on the soil, and you can see in that photo that there are roots down, and it is with the help of the roots, it is feeding the soil life, and because of the feeding of the soil life, there will be proper aeration in the soil, and so whatever water falls on it gets absorbed into the soil, because the biggest reservoir of rainwater is the soil, from which we only need living plants throughout the year. Only thing that we need to ensure to get the water that is falling in your landscape is to have plants living throughout the year on your landscape. That is all what you need. And as Abhishek told, if you spill one drop of water, you can get it only next year. So be ready before the rain comes. And you can see.
Not audible, Prabhu.
Not audible.
Prabhu, we can hear. It must be problem with the other participant. Prabhu, you please check your mic.
Check your mic.
And please don't disturb in the main flow, Prabhu. Okay? Hare Krishna.
Correct. So I can see from the second photo that if the soil is not covered with a living plant, then it leads to compaction as well as runoff. So this water that is lost is what ends up in floods. And that, as a result of that, since the water is not gone into the soil, it ends up in drought next year. So when, see from the picture, you can see that when it rains, if the water that is flowing out of your land
Prabhuji, now it's not audible. Hare Krishna.
Sri Kumar Prabhu, can you just unmute it?
Okay. Now is it audible?
Yes, audible.
Yes,
I
Prabhu.
request all the participants, let us please don't unmute yourselves. Please. I will take care of the panel, please. Okay, Hare Krishna.
Muddy water. If the rain runs off the soil surface, carries organic matter and soil. That is, when you see water that is muddy, it means it has taken away your wealth. That is how we have to see it. And why is this happening? Why is it? We can say, some people say it is because the rainfall was so more than last year. No, that is not the reason why you have it. It is an unintended consequence of a daily decision. It's the actual cause of it is the decision that you have taken that depletes soil life, like by tilling or keeping the soil bare or doing monocropping. Don't blame any of the beings that are along with us. The rain is not the cause for it. It is the decision that you have taken. It could be tillage or keeping the soil bare or monocropping that we have done. And it is to be understood that for every ton of food that grains we produce, we are losing at least 20 tons of soil every year. And in the first day, the video, you understood that we have only 60 more harvests left. Now, we will show you one stability test. That is, you can take the soil from two different areas wherein you have tilled, you have applied chemical fertilizers, and you have done monocropping, and you are taking one piece of soil from there, and on the other side where you have not tilled and you have not used any chemical fertilizers or insecticides or pesticides. So two soils were taken and we put it into a jar of water. As you can see the right photo, that the right one is that soil taken from a property that has not been tilled or any sort of inputs used there. The left one which was tilled and not all the inputs possible was used. And from the top picture, you can see the left and the right. The left one is how the land which is tilled or the inputs were used will look like, and the right side is how it will look like. So we have taken a piece of soil, a lump of soil from both this, and you can just look at the experiment what happened.
Here, it's continuously tilled.
The left one is the soil from a tilled land. The moment it was put, the whole thing just collapsed and the soil started to go down. Whereas the other one, it was remaining intact.
Tilled soil, that down, that is
Just
right.
a little bit
That down.
shaked it,
Put that down,
even
maybe
then only a little bit, but still it was intact.
Still the,
No disturbance. You shouldn't disturb.
yeah, we should.
And
now you,
interestingly, this was kept like this for one day, and the picture was the
That
left
one
one
is
totally
so you can see if you come close,
bubbles there.
bubbles are there. That is air spaces are there. Water is
what it
going
is
in.
doing,
Soaked.
it is doing so much of pollution you see in this. It is just
Water is
disintegrating.
soaked.
Yeah, we
It
can
is
see.
soaked here, and here the soil is going along.
No soil life, soil life.
So this is the difference what will happen. See, just imagine in a tilled soil, when you do the tilling, after it has rained, you'll be seeing the water flowing will be full of this mud. It is your topsoil is going, and so it is like the operation is successful, but the patient is bleeding. That is the situation that will be when you do that way.
Here.
So this is an area wherein you have the topsoil is compacted. That is why the water is not penetrated. Actually, if it is effective, the rainwater should have gone deep down. This surface ponding shouldn't be there. It looks like, when we see, it may think that, what below this, it is full of water. No, it's because of compaction. Rain pounds bare soil unprotected by litter into a hard cap. Capped soil are less receptive to rainfall, particularly in short, low volume events when water tends to roll off or sit on top of the soil until it evaporates. The water that we have lost by evaporation, you can get back only next year. And this is how the capped soil will look like. Somehow we have to break it. And in the coming session, we will understand, in our program, what we have told is the resources needed, it will be provided at this site. That is the peculiarity of the paradigm that we are following. So in the coming sessions, we will understand by which system we can remove this compaction, and see on the capped surface, even a seed that is trying to come out, it cannot come because of the capped soil. So the key is in how much rain falls, but what happens after it falls. That is what effectiveness of rainfall means. That is what we need. So which is true? Drought causes bare soil, or bare ground causes drought. There is, in such an open bare ground, there will be more evaporation, more chemical oxidation. More chemical oxidation means the opposite of chemical oxidation is biological oxidation. That is, some of the livestock should do the recycling process. The third one is there will be more warming. You saw in the videos I showed where the soil temperature increases because of the spillage of sunlight, and then more droughts, and it keeps on going. But naturally, the answer would be that the bare ground actually causes drought. And I would say no, it is even further. Droughts and floods are unintended consequence of our decisions that led to the creation of bare soils. It is a decision that we have taken. Don't blame the resource. The rain is not the cause of it. The soil is not the cause of the problem. The way we managed our landscape, and that is through a decision. So every problem that we face is actually the cause of the problem is the decision. And I'm just again repeating that every decision is being influenced by the paradigm we have. And I'm again repeating, the paradigm we have is the universal paradigm. Is Om Purnamadam Purnamidam. He is perfect, and what is created is perfect. And all the inputs you need will be provided at this site. So I looked through the first window and I saw the solar energy flow. Then Abhishek looked through the window and he found the water cycle. Now I'm passing on the baton to Ajit Prabhu, who will speak about what he is seeing through the window he is looking at. Ajit Prabhu, can you take over?
Hare Krishna.
Yes.
Yeah, it is audible?
Yes, Prabhu. Please carry.
Yeah. So the next window, or the next aspect which we will look through is mineral cycle, or the functions of the landscape. So we saw the water cycle. Now, when we say it is mineral cycle, so in the mineral cycle, just like in our lifespan, we have birth, growth, old age, and death. So in this case, it's like birth, growth, death, and decay. So when this cycle is complete, then only it will be called as a mineral cycle. So it has to be a very efficient mineral cycle. Then only the function of the landscape will be done, or it will happen correctly. So the cycling of the nutrients which are coming from the plants are transformed or the recycled by the organisms to make it available back to the plants. So this is actually the nutrient cycle. So it has to be made possible by the landscape by recycling it. So how effectively the loads of leaves are generated through the land by using the photosynthesis. So the tons of loads of the organic material, it has to be produced by the land, and it has to be recycled perfectly back to the plants, so that the nutrients are properly recycled, and the mineral cycle is functioning in its proper way. By the process of feeding all the life that more in landscape are responsibly recycled with biomass produced on it. So when the biomass is produced, it has to be recycled through the organisms. See, the land is going to recycle, but who is not the bare soil or the dead soil is going to recycle it? The organisms present in the soil, they are going to actually recycle it. Next. Yes. So we see in this picture, the left side and the right side. So in the left picture, do you see the mineral cycle functioning, or in the right side? So in the right side, the photograph, you see the leaves which are falling on the ground are cleaned, swept away, and may be burnt or the thrown away somewhere. But in the left picture, the leaves are fallen on the ground, and they are decaying naturally in the shade of the trees. So the most trees and shrubs, they actually naturally they leave their leaves on the ground. So when they are on the ground, when they are biologically decaying, the mineral cycle is functioning. So left side it is functioning, and right side the mineral cycle is not functioning. Next one. Yes. So when the leaves are falling on the ground, actually it will be recycled and the nutrients will be available back to the plant. Yeah. So every year in the bulk of world's landscape, there has to be massive production of the billions of tons of the above ground material. So that grasses or the leaves, it has to grow. If it is not growing, that means the land is not functioning properly. So when it is growing that much, see in the left picture, we see it is green grass growing and it is drying up. So how it could be recycled back? So what will be the next stage in this case? Yes, all the biomass that falls, all the biomass which is produced after the rain, food, it's actually rain is the food and habitat for the all other living beings on the earth. So the biomass which is produced on the ground, it has to be feeding to the organisms which are in the soil and on the soil, both the ways. So any guess what it could be feeding to? So it is actually the ruminants come in the picture. So it has to be given to the some rumen which will transform it and recycle it back. And that remaining material which after comes as a what do you say, dung or the poop of the animals which have eaten it, then it will be recycled by the soil organisms back to the plants. So if suppose it is not done by the ruminants, what could be the other option which we have in front of us? So we'll see the next slide. Yes. So what is the problem if we burn it? Anyway, it is going to get recycled, or maybe we cut it and put it on the ground. If you see on the right side corner, actually we are cutting the branch on which we are sitting, because burning will not do any help anyways, because it is going to actually pollute the environment and killing of the microbes, somebody is saying. So it is all doing damage. Even if you are cutting it, that is also not the right way, because it has to go through the rumen of animals and it has to recycle it. Yes, and there is a labor involved when you cut it manually, and it will not be recycled in the natural way. It will be oxidized. Most of the part will be oxidized. Yes, next. So crop residues should be seen not as a waste, but as a providers of essential environmental services. Usually in India, it is happening, or all over world, the people who they are growing whatever the crops they're growing, after the crop residue what remains after the crop is harvested, usually it is burned or sold. It is not recycled back in that same area. It is not possible to take more out of the soil than what is put in it without the uh, degrading its quality. So when we are taking and taking and taking, and we're not giving it back to the soil from where we are taking, it is actually going to ruin the soil more and more. So we'll see next slide, the how the soil or the landscape what we have is actually a capital. The soil is our capital, and hence it should not be mined.
Soil is like a bank account. In a bank account, you cannot withdraw more than what you put in it. You must balance the bank account very carefully, and always if you want your bank account to increase, the input must exceed the output. Soil is the same way. Anything that we take out of soil, whether it's nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, nutrients, whatever we take out, we must replace them. If you do not replace, and that's an example of taking for granted, if you do not replace, soil will not produce. Or it will produce, but it will deplete the natural reserves of nutrients. For example, soil organic matter or soil carbon is the reserve of nutrients in the soil. When you do not replace what you harvest, either in grains or animal product, then the organic matter content is decomposed and nutrients are released. So progressively you are mining soil. As a result of this mining practice, we call that extractive farming. In sub-Saharan Africa, in South Asia, in the Caribbean, Haiti is a very good example. Many countries in South America have depleted the soil by extractive farming practice, by mining the nutrient. So they have a negative nutrient budget. I mean, what they take out has been more than what they put in for decades, if not for centuries. So the soil productive capacity has been mined out. Soils have been taken for granted. That is where they do not produce. I strongly believe that health of soil, plants, animals, people, and ecosystems is one and indivisible.
Yeah. So when we see birth, growth, death, and decay, if any of this is affected, the full cycle will be affected. So it has to be actually complete cycle. Nothing should be disturbed in this, otherwise the cycle will break it. So just I wanted to say that. So now what we saw that soil is a bank account. So suppose I have 10 lakh rupees in my bank account. Can I withdraw 100 crores from it? No, it is not possible. So similarly, when we have a soil which is having some amount of nutrients and the fertility, when we keep withdrawing it and over again, so it is going to, go in the worst stage. It is not going to bankrupt. We'll call it as a bankrupt because we have less balance and we want to withdraw more amount. So similarly, our soils are also like bankrupt accounts, that they don't have sufficient nutrients available because it is only taking happening and nothing is done to maintain the deposit in the bank. Similarly, so it's said the flowers are the linchpin of the world. So whenever we see this or hear this statement, flowers are the linchpin of the world, what thought comes in our mind? Immediately we think that the farmer who is plowing the plow, but actually the actual flower is the soil biodiversity, the microorganisms or all the organisms which are present in the soil. When we see in the right picture here, the lakhs and lakhs of different varieties of organisms which are living in the soil. So the structure of a healthy soil includes roots, SOM, and the biotic activity. So this biotic activity is actually the flowers for the soil. All the soil life fed by the plants, root exudates and the crops residues constitute the real flowers. So when the plant is growing, actually that plant is also plowing the soil because it is aerating and it is putting out the exudates in the soil. And the crop residues which are on the ground, actually they're also plowing. How? The organisms, the living organisms in the soil, they will be acting on that crop residue and recycling it back to the soil. So they are the real flowers. When we don't have that cover or that biomass on the ground, the plowing will not take place. So we will have to plow in that case. So next slide says, so what we see from the slide, what we say, this is 1998, the picture is there, and 2008. So in the 1998, there are a lot of egrets behind the tractor after the plowing, and in 2008, there is nothing. Nobody is there to see or eat anything, because the 1998 there was a good amount of, when the soil was exposed, the lot of soil life was existing. So the egrets were coming to eat out all the whatever life forms available. But now there is no soil life, so the machinery is tilling bigger and bigger, deeper and deeper machinery is tilling. So when the plowers are present, so digging is not required much. Everything is actually done by the nature's plowers, the microorganisms. But the hardness will increase when they are absent. So we will have to dig deeper and deeper. So the soil will be, what do you say, losing its nutrients, and the soil erosion will take place maximum. Next. It is audible, na?
Yes, yes, please carry.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm presenting first time, so a little bit nervous, but I'm trying my best. So as tillage has caused severe soil erosion, where we are seeing now the left picture, we see the soil structure is actually the upper part is, what do you say, O horizon called as the surface layer. Yes, and the A horizon, E horizon, B horizon. So this is actually the has to be, a part has to be, what is it, full of soil and microorganisms and the carbon, and then the rocky strata comes down as you go. So currently what we have is actually no topsoil is present. We are actually farming on the subsoil because all the top layers have been eroded, or it has been depleted. There is no soil almost. It is actually subsoil now, is exposed. In our area in Chandavaji, we see there is no soil. We see only stones on the top. That means it is so much eroded, or so much of the damage is done, that the soil is not there. It is only the stones on the top we see now. So there is a soil depletion, so much of that now we are farming on the subsoil. So what is the result of this? All tillage tools destroy soil structure. All tillage tools decrease water infiltration, as we saw in the water cycle, that whatever, how much of water is going inside in the ground, whatever is absorbed by the earth, that is called the actual rainfall. So water infiltration is reduced by the tilling tools, as tillage tools reduce organic matter. So what is the result of all this tilling is that in 1950, one apple was having 4.3 milligrams of iron content. And in 1998, it has reduced to 0.18 milligrams. So to get one apple's iron content, that is 4.3 milligram in 1950, now we will have to eat almost 26 apples. So this is the problem when we have so much of tillage going on. Yes, next. The video was there.
It will come next.
Okay.
Okay,
So,
play the video. Play the video.
yes.
और अब हम जिस खबर का विश्लेषण करेंगे वो आपके पूरे परिवार की सेहत से जुड़ी हुई खबर है। आपको जानकर हैरानी होगी कि आपके भोजन की थाली में से जरूरी पोषक तत्व गायब होते जा रहे हैं। यानी आप जो खाना खा रहे हैं उससे आपका पेट तो भर सकता है लेकिन पोषण नहीं हो सकता। नेशनल इंस्टीट्यूट ऑफ न्यूट्रिशन ने इसी वर्ष एक फूड कॉम्पोजिशन टेबल तैयार किया है, जिसके आधार पर इंडियन डायटिक एसोसिएशन यानी IDA ने भारतीय थाली से जुड़ा एक रिसर्च किया। इस रिसर्च के मुताबिक पिछले 30 वर्षों से भारतीय भोजन की ताकत और उसके पोषक तत्व लगातार कम हो रहे हैं। आपने अक्सर बड़े बुजुर्गों को ये कहते हुए सुना होगा कि पुराने जमाने में भोजन की बात ही कुछ और हुआ करती थी। हर चीज शुद्ध होती थी और आपका खाना शरीर को लगता था। बड़े बुजुर्गों की ये बात अब सच साबित हो रही है। IDA का रिसर्च इस बात को भी साबित करता है कि 30 वर्ष पहले खाने में शुद्धता की गारंटी आज के मुकाबले कहीं ज्यादा थी।
Yes.
Done?
Yes.
So this is an unintended consequence of applying purchased inputs to produce the crops. So what is happening? The nutrients in the food are, what do you say, evaporating, you can say, or they're not there. So the slide, actually the next slide shows the until 1991, the nutrients in our food have reduced. The percentage is written here, 14%. And now, okay, this is actually giving each, like how much in the banana, how much in the fruits and the vegetables, carrots and broccoli, that reduction has happened compared to 1940 till 1991. So to the previous slide. So USDA study says 1940 to 2010, 70% loss of nutrients in all families of fruits and vegetables. So 70% loss. That is like huge. So depleted and poisoned soils and waters through the conventional agriculture. Artificial pesticides and fertilizers leave toxic poisons in the consumers. Alarming increase in the rates of all cancers, often related to toxins consumed or exposed to. Younger generation no longer continues family farms. So people are leaving the farms and farming activities. Suicide rate in farmers is soaring, more than double the rate of the veterans. So the death, what do you say, suicide rates are higher than the natural deaths now. Yes, bro. Next. So by what is the effect of this? The nutrients or the food what we are eating is reduced in our fruits and vegetables and the grains, whatever we are eating. So what could be the cause of this? Sorry, what will happen after this? What will cause this? This will actually cause a hidden hunger. That means hidden hunger is a major public health problem caused by a lack of essential vitamins and minerals in the diet. Often the signs of this from the malnutrition are hidden, as individual may look all right but suffer extremely negative impacts on health and well-being. In 1965, 4% of our population had chronic disease. Today, 46% of our children are having chronic disease. So this is the, by not having nutrients in food, it will cause the hidden hunger, and the everything may seem all right on the looking outwardly, but actually we are suffering from a lot of chronic diseases. Yes, next. Yes. So take home message from us: please do not kill plants and insects with inorganic or organic products. So even though some people may use organic pesticides, it may not be harming the us, but actually ultimately it is going to harm in the way that the the insects and pesticides are removed, but the plant health has not come back. Plants are healthy, then naturally the pest and insects will not come. Please do not remove plants from its roots, because what will happen by that? When we remove the plants from the roots, one of the cycle will not function. That is, photosynthesis will not happen. The solar energy flow, that cycle will not happen. Function. It will be disturbed. So that is why the plants are not to be uprooted. Please do not remove crop residues, plant biomass from where it was grown. So if the leaves are falling, let it fall on the ground underneath the tree, or the crop residue, let it be there, or feed there only to the animals. Please do not burn the crop residues or plant biomass. Do not reprune a plant with livestock or technology before it has recovered. So it comes to the grazing, that when we have grazed some plants, so it has to be given sufficient time to recover it, and before that one should not re-graze it, or pruning should not take place before its recovery has happened. Otherwise plants will suffer, and the functions of the photosynthesis and the solar energy flow will be affected. So that is why it should not be repruned before it has recovered or regrazed. So it ends my session.
One more slide.
Yes. So one more slide is there. The video is there. So it is the essence of this whole session, you can say. Please play.
We've never bothered to realise that if the single function of a landscape is to recycle as much of each year's production or each day's production as it can. But in the case of recycling, reduce oxidation to the absolute minimum, retain water at the highest particular potential, and it's only able to be done with plants. He can't do it, he can help the plants do it. But if he doesn't use the plants at the end of the day, he's wasted his time.
Yep.
Yes. So this is actually a very potential statement what he has made, very small, but it is very effective. If we understand this, then the whole program is successful actually. We have never bothered to realize that the single function of a landscape is to recycle as much as each year's production or each day's production. What is that? That is actually whatever is grown on the ground as it can. And in the case of recycling, reduce oxidation. That means the sunlight should not be hitting to the ground or the material, the organic matter which is fallen on the ground. It has to go to the living leaf only. The photosynthesis has to happen. Then the shade should come on the ground, as well as the biomass which is on the ground. So that will reduce the oxidation, and it will help in the forming the humus. So the soil will become better and better to the absolute minimum. So that reduction of oxidation to the absolute minimum will happen only in the case when the mineral cycle is functioning properly, the microorganisms are active on the biomass. Retain water at the highest particular potential, and certainly that we can't do it. It has to be done by the plants and the living organisms. Everybody has a role, we also have a role, but this particular function will be done by the plants only. And if we are not using the plants for this particular purpose, then actually we are wasting our time, because this is the only function what has to happen through the plants. So so we have seen that this whole mineral cycle is actually in the function. So the soil health will be taken care. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, now you have just seen through the third video. Now we will pass on the baton to Vishnunam Das, who will say what he has seen through the fourth window. Welcome, Vishnunam Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. So, from the four ecosystems, this is the final and the most easiest one, biodiversity and the succession, which is also titled as community dynamics. There is no such thing as an independent organism. All species need other species in order to survive. So this is what we want in our soils. Diversity of microbes, diversity of plants, diversity of insects, diversity of birds, diversity of animals. All these diversities to come, and this is what we mean by community. Generally, when we speak community, we think humans, but it is not only humans, it is all the species created by nature. So we are looking to invite all of them, and the processes are the previous ecosystems. To that, it is very easy. You don't have to do anything. You just have to be orchestrating the system, and they will manifest. So succession is the process of change and development in communities of all living organisms, including plants, microorganisms, and small and large creatures of every sort. So there is a succession process going on in the nature. So it's not that all kind of plants, all kind of microbes, all kind of birds, or all kinds of insects will manifest simultaneously into our farms. There is a succession. So they will be there for a period of time, and when the environment is not suitable, they will leave and some other species will manifest. As is mentioned in the second point, a species will move into an environment when the conditions are suitable for its establishment, and will move out of that environment when the conditions become unsuitable for its reproduction. So this is also a natural process. We don't have to do anything in this. Only thing we have to do is we have to avoid being a human doing. We have to be a human being, and then only then we can achieve this natural succession process of nature. Otherwise, generally we intervene in this system. What we have seen is people intervene and the succession is not allowed. So we will see in the next slide, which shows how the succession happens. So generally what is left with us is bare rocks. Most of the world is looking like this now. So this process of photosynthesis will start as soon as there is rainfall, and if needed we need to give some animal impact to start. With that thing, the pioneer plants will start coming in, and when the pioneer plants will come, it will gradually keep moving the stages from pioneer stage to intermediate stage, and from intermediate stage to the climax community, where you will see big size trees. And this is a natural progression. Again, I am repeating, we don't have to do anything. All the species are working for the common context. Only we humans have to align the context. And right now our context is self-centered, of being a human doing rather than working for the whole. Working for the whole. We don't like to work for the whole. We have been educated to work in parts. So from bare soil to stable forest is a natural succession. No? But generally we will try to import plants. We will want to put 100 types of trees when we start a farm project, but it is generally going to be more struggling for us to maintain them because the environment might not be suitable to that particular plant. We don't understand what is suitable to that plant, what is not. But the nature is perfectly designed by the Lord, and it will work very perfectly provided we don't intervene. So this process of succession will go on its own. We just have to be observing and avoiding any disturbances in the succession process. So in the next slide, you will see there is a thorny plant, and it came first when the soil was bare, and it is also termed as a pioneer plant. Generally, we see it as a useless thing and we try to remove it, and that is the biggest mistake we do, to make the soil bare again. So pioneer plants move into an area first. They will change the conditions of the soil, as they will also do photosynthesis. They will also bring soil diversity in terms of different kind of microbes, and then they are outcompeted by a plant that thrive in the change soil condition. So by soil improvement process done by the first pioneer plant, it will improve the soil, and the next better plant will manifest for that particular soil which has improved. So you see a neem tree is manifesting out of it, and the thorny plant is trying to leave that environment, and it is already drying up and it will leave the environment. So there is no competition. They are working in cooperation with the common context, and that common context is to improve the soil life, improve the ecosystem functionality, improve the photosynthesis. They are just focusing on that. There is no competition. They are not telling that I am better than you or you are not important than me. They are just working for the whole. Their purpose is to work for the whole, not work in parts. And this is how nature is designed. So we have to learn this from the nature. Srila Prabhupada used to say that if one can learn from the nature, we don't need to go to school. So this is what this nature is teaching us. And if we will focus on this science which nature is giving us, then we can live our life very peacefully and we can achieve our context without fail. So we have to change our decision. Generally, we remove this thorny plant immediately. That is a wrong decision we have taken in the past. We have seen that everywhere when a thorny plant grows, this is the first thing to be removed. We view it as an enemy, as if it will spoil the land, but actually it has manifested to protect the soil and to regenerate it. Next. So the greater the diversity of the plants, the greater the diversity of microbes. This is very important. So we cannot think that there are only few varieties of microbes. As many varieties of plants will come on our farm, as many varieties of microbes will manifest on its own. So it is the diversity in microorganisms that makes it possible for natural systems to be so functional and healthy compared to the sterile, lifeless, and thwarted system offered by monoculture with a limited microbial diversity. So generally, what we have seen in our life is monoculture farm. Even if I talk about myself, if I talk about my father, if I talk about my grandfather, we have all only had the privilege to see monoculture farm. So we think that this is the reality of this world, but it is not. Only because of this monoculture, we have lost the diversity. The decision to remove the diversity has damaged our soils, because the microbes which we have with the monoculture crop are also mono. They are not diverse. So above ground diversity is a mirror for the below ground diversity. So more diversity we see on the ground, we should understand from that the different variety of microbes are already there in our soil. We don't have to dig and check in some laboratory. It is signifying that the more variety you see on the top, there is more diversity in the ground. So biodiversity feeds itself. It is natural. We don't have to make any arrangement. So as we have in our context, we don't have to bring anything from out. Everything is readily, freely available on the site. So this is how it happens. So we have to observe and allow this biodiversity to manifest. We don't have to throw any seeds. It is not so important. But what is more important is to allow the ecosystem to function without intervening in it. Next. So what we have achieved by human doing is right before your eyes now. So this is the symptoms of biodiversity loss. The elephant is living with us now. We don't want this elephant. None of the policymakers, nobody ever invited these problems in the society. But because we have attacked this ecosystem of diversity, biodiversity, we have tried to remove diversity from this planet. That is why we are forced to live with this elephant. We have no choice. Despite we don't want, we have no choice. So the decision taken to remove the diversity needs to be rethought. The decision of biodiversity has to be rethink. Otherwise, we cannot make this planet a place to live. We will be struggling more and more with the times to come. So it is very, very important that we use biodiversity as the real option, not this fertilizer, insecticides, and the herbicides. If we will focus on this, modern tools and techniques of the conventional farming things, we are only going to see this elephant grow bigger. So if we want to achieve the context, we have to change the decision from monoculture to biodiversity. Next. So this is the same thing explained here, but another important point mentioned here is the edge effect. So when there is diversity, you see more edges, and so there is no pest. So the plants grow healthy, the soil grow healthy, because there is no competition. But when there is monocrops, there are fewer edge and there are more pests. It results into more. Fewer edge means the roots of the plants are of same type, so there are same amount of same type of microbes in the soil, so you don't get any benefit of diversity. But when there is diversity in the soil life, and so there are no pests, there is no competition. So the quality of plant, the quality of soil improves. So we have to shift from biodiversity, from monocropping to biodiversity. Next. Edge effect is again explained here. We can go to next slide. This is a video. Please listen it carefully.
For 28 years, this area has received conventional agriculture. And one of the things that you'll see here is that the corn is actually spindly and yellow, and this is related to the soil has not improved during the experiment. This comes from long-term organic management. One of the things is that people would freak out with these weeds because they would say that they're taking away from the crop. But our long-term data shows that we can produce even more in these organic systems than in the conventional systems. So that, you know, like a lot of this has to do with how you view things. Can you let life live?
So this Rodale Institute is one of the pioneer institute in America promoting farming, organic farming. And he is very clearly telling that what we have learned is this other plant which grows on its own will reduce the production, but their data shows that it has only increased the production. So it is clearly telling that more diversity is helping because there are more edges. More edges means no pest means more profits. So we have to change our mindset. This is also a very nice experiment. We will see this and discuss after that. Yes.
Plant productivity increased with increasing plant species richness. That means that meadows with higher diversity produce more biomass. Now we want to understand the mechanisms that underlie this effect. The researchers always compare plots containing low plant diversity with ones containing high plant diversity. They not only want to know whether plants grow well together or whether they compete, but also how plants, microorganisms and animals influence each other. They showed that plant diversity had a positive effect on the diversity of other organisms. For example, in species-rich grasslands, there are more species of pollinators, pest increases are less pronounced, and more earthworms are altering the soil structure, allowing plant roots to have better access to rain and soil water. This means that a diverse ecosystem can have a positive influence on functions that are also important for human well-being, for instance, yield increases and soil erosion control. A second
So biodiversity is the key driver and it makes the other ecosystems more effective. When there is biodiversity, the photosynthetic capacity also increases. When there is biodiversity, the water infiltration will be also better. So it is, and the mineral cycle will be also more healthier because there will be more life. So it will lead to faster decaying of the things. So basically, this is the base of the other ecosystems. Very, very important. But again, as I said, we don't have to invest anything to bring this biodiversity. It's a natural succession that happens in the nature. Only thing we have to learn is not to intervene in it and be a normal spectator to it and allow the system to progress in natural progression. Next. This is from Srimad Bhagavatam. So it clearly says that we don't have to kill So do we have to kill someone to grow someone? The insects are our real vaccinators. So again, when we disturb the nature, it is like cutting the branch on which we are sitting. So this is actually very simple when we listen to this whole ecosystem process. But I would like to give you a warning that it is very difficult to practice because it's totally against our mindset, totally against our mindset. It is totally against the mindset of the farmers near your farm. They will think that this person has gone mad. But the reality is that none of them has succeeded in achieving the context which we have brought forward. None of them. They have all failed to have a good lifestyle. They have all failed to protect their soil. They have all failed to protect the water tables. They have all failed to grow healthy foods. So we cannot listen to them. Generally, after these sessions, there are so many questions which comes up, but the answer is one, that whatever you have seen so far has only grown the elephant more healthier. The elephant, not us. Only the elephant has grown more healthier. So it is clearly shouting at the top of its voice that all the prevailing systems are failure. They have resulted into degrading lands. They have resulted into degrading water tables, depleting water tables, everything, all the problems which we see are because of the decisions taken in the past in agriculture. So we have to reverse our decisions and they have to be based on newer paradigms and they should lead us to our context which we have framed now. So as per this shloka, all life forms in our landscape are our resources. So whatever is available on the landscape are resources, they are not problems. And common sense tells us that resources can never cause problem. Instead, it is how we manage them. Because our management is not proper, the resources are led to degenerating the soils. But once these resources are properly managed, then the soils will regenerate and we will have abundance. There will be no scarcity. The elephant will be forced to leave us. We will be having very easy pathway to achieve our context. But the need is to understand that all these resources are important and they are freely available. Only thing we have to change is how we manage these resources. So keeping soil always covered. This is the whole context or whole base of our ecosystem. This is what we are trying to achieve. And once we achieve this, we will have biodiversity. There will be healthy soils, healthy plants, healthy animals, healthy food production, and healthy people. But if the soils are bare, it is impossible to achieve this. Right now we see, you travel across India, all over, the soils are bare. In the summer, there is no farming done. Soils are bare. Soil life will just go away. All the moisture, whatever is left will be gone. How will we farm? So people are not understanding these practices are going on and we are trying to achieve some success, but it is impossible. So the most important thing is to keep the soil covered and only then the regenerative process can start. This is the first step to start a regenerative process. So again, same thing, the edge effect is explained here. This only by doing this, we can increase our profit or in other words, reduce our losses. So what should we think then about the multidimensional relationship plants create with soil, organisms, other plants and animals? So this is very complex. We don't even understand how they are working, how a plant supports the plant, how the plant supports the other microbe, how the microbe helps the other microbe, how they're helping the animals. It is a very complex system. So when biochemists create compounds in labs, we consider them as somebody very intelligent. So plants routinely outsmart people. They are doing it every single day. We don't know how many different type of things they are making, how many different types of microbes are manifesting, and it's going on. So we have to continue to bring this diversity. It's very important to bring biodiversity to our lands. Without that, we cannot regenerate. We cannot expedite this process of regenerating. So regenerative farming is in our ability to harvest the freely available natural resources. These are the ecosystems, sunlight, rain, air. Dung and urine will be explained the next time, which is from the moving cows, livestock. So real capital needed for farming is a healthy soil. That is the only capital needed. And to make a healthy soil, we have to keep the soil covered. And how to keep it covered is with these ecosystems. So ultimately, you don't need any capital to start this farming. Only you need to have this common sense to practice these ecosystems. We have to promote or push forward or welcome these ecosystems on our land and try to harvest them. This is what we are supposed to harvest. Other things are all byproduct of that. Yeah. So Mother's Day, Mother Cow and Mother Earth. So there are 7 mothers. I think they have discussed in the beginning of the presentation today. So out of the 7, these 2 are out of human species. So one is Mother Cow and one is Mother Earth. So Mother Cow needs a good owner who does not separate her from her calf and who does not separate her from performing her function of grazing. So this is the need of Mother Cow, that she needs a sensible person who can connect her with her calf and who can connect her back to the land where she can graze and perform her function for the nature. So this is what we should pledge on this day, as a sensible or a good persons on this planet, that will try to achieve these 2 points mentioned. And regarding Mother Earth need is the 4 ecosystem services to be in place, what we have learned today: water cycle, community dynamics, mineral cycle, and solar energy flow. So these are the needs, and for this you don't need any capital. You just have to be a sensible person, simple, sensible person. You don't need any money. You don't need any education. There are no prerequisite qualifications to do this. This is so simple. So unless and until we serve these mothers, coincidentally this has happened today, Mother's Day. We never planned our session like this, but luckily it's a Mother's Day today, and we got an opportunity to talk about how to serve our mothers today, which we have never learned in our life. We have only learned how to exploit these mothers. So we are grateful to the organizers, especially Deva Varnashram Ministry and our core preacher, Dr. Shri Kumar and Dr. Shri Kalaji, who have educated us on this. So thank you very much. The field floor is open to Dr. Shri Kumar to continue to answer all those questions. So this is telling you all that it is not which method you are using, but what is more important is to follow these principles what we have learned. You can use any method to do your farming, no problem, but the principles should not be compromised. If you will compromise on the principles, then you will not achieve your context. So this is the need of the hour, and today on this Mother's Day we should try to at least do some resolution, some commitment that we will stop these abuses with our mothers, and then and only then this planet can be a place to live with. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. And we
so pass it on for questions.
Yes, back to the host to manage the questions.
Yes. Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you very much for your wonderful talks, Prabhu. We really thank our Vishnunam Prabhu, Ajit Prabhu, Abhishek Prabhu, and of course our Dr. Shri Kumar Prabhu for this wonderful session today in view of today's Mother's Day. Yes, like as our Vishnunam Prabhu rightly said, we have to take a resolution today how we can save our mothers, which are continuously being abused every day. So now I request the participants who can come up with their questions. They can raise their hands, and one by one they can ask their questions to any of our speakers. Thank you. Yeah, first question goes with our Sudhir Prabhu. Yes, please go
on. Hare Krishna, Shri Kumar Prabhu. Prabhu, my question is, in one of the slides, you mentioned that the ground should be covered with the natural litter, whatever is there in the form of dry leaves, and not remove them, as a result of which, if we do, there is this sunlight penetrating, it causes the temperature to increase. So my question is, prior to this session today, I was planning of an, I had an idea in mind wherein I can use this dry leaves along with the kitchen waste that is coming and prepare the compost. So if I were to, which of this is better? Can this be done, or would leaving the natural dry leaves on the soil itself be much more better than using them for compost?
Ajit Prabhu, can you say the answer please? Mineral cycle?
Yes, I would like to answer it. So my question is that what is your purpose? What do you want to do with this? You have a small kitchen garden, or is it on the farm you're living that you want to use this waste as a mulch? Because it differs when you're using it for kitchen garden, just near to your house, and it is a, what do you say, inhabited area. So it is difficult to spread the litter on the ground, because it may not look good if it is near to your house. But on my farm, I'm open, and I have papaya trees and other trees. I just, what do you say, take my kitchen waste and I pour it below the tree and I mulch it. And over the time, it gets decomposed and naturally becomes the compost at the same place. But if you are going to use it for your small kitchen garden and it is very near to your house, then it is best to make it actually in a compost and then put it, because if you just keep it, a lot of insects and microorganisms will come and they will be maybe disturbing you.
So this is for it's not exactly for kitchen environment, but near to house, not on a farm. So I'm talking more of like we have a garden at the back wherein we have like multiple diverse trees like mango trees, guava trees, and all. So there is a lot of dry leaves litter that.
Anyway, yeah, those you leave it there only. It's a tree garden. No, it's full of trees are there. You let it be there.
And not collect the dry leaves and make compost.
No need. Let it be
there. Right, actually, it will become compost at the same place, and it will act as a mulch also. But kitchen waste, if you throw there, then it will attract insects.
No, but it's a bigger area. No, he's having a mango garden. That means there is a bigger area. It is not a small kitchen garden. There are many trees. He told diverse trees are there. No, that means it is some good areas there.
Yes, if it is no problem with the insect, naturally when you throw the kitchen waste, the insects will come.
No, insects will come, and then birds will come, and then that will be managed. The area is more.
Yeah, if the area is more, no problem.
Yes.
Thank you.
So leave it there, Prabhu. Leave it there.
Okay. So I will go ahead with the another question, which is from our Raghunandana Prabhu. Prabhu, you can go ahead with your question.
Okay, Prabhu, thank you. Yeah, thank you first of all to all the speakers. So it's a wonderful session, Prabhu. And so I have two questions. One is to Ajit Prabhu. So Ajit Prabhu, he mentioned that we should not pull plants by the root, but we see some of the vegetables we eat, like leafy vegetables or like ginger or potato or whatever. So those have to be removed from root. So yeah, how do you do that then? If you want to eat those kind of vegetables, huh?
You're harvesting them.
Yeah. So
we're talking about, yes. So these are actually root vegetables, so like potatoes, sweet potatoes, carrots, radish, and actually they are cultivated. Beetroots, everything is cultivated to eat the tubers and roots. So we are talking about the usually what we do when we cultivate anything. Suppose we are cultivating even potatoes. Along with the potatoes, whatever grows, we tend to uproot it and clean it and keep only potatoes. So it has to be actually diverse. Let's suppose along with the potatoes there is a little bit of mustard, little bit of what do you say, cloves, or little bit of the radish is growing, or any other species growing. So we can let it grow, or even if weeds are growing. So if you uproot it, then the natural phenomena of the photosynthesis is stopped or reduced, because the potato plant or the main crop what you're having, it may not be harvesting the 100% of sunlight which is falling on that area. So if weeds actually help to catch up the sunlight and reduce the evaporation,
spillage.
Spillage of the energy. Yes. So they are actually helping. So when you uproot it, that harvesting of sunlight is not happening. So we can prune it so that it remains lower than the main crop. So in that case, what will happen? You will get your crop harvest also, and the maximum of carbon pumping and the conversion of sunlight into the organic material will take place. So that is why we are saying that don't uproot it. We can prune them, we can cut them, they will regrow. So when you uproot it, actually you're disturbing a lot of things. You are even opening the soil, and you're making a lot of microorganisms to die also. So when I cultivate here some crops, when I see there is a big weed grown, when I uproot it, I see huge lump of soil is coming along with it.
Yes.
Almost like 2-3 kg. So actually that much of area you're disturbing, and what do you say, you're making a lot of carbon to lose, and all soil life is disturbed. So if you just prune it or cut it, all that activity is not stopped, and the plant will slowly, weed also will slowly regrow, and the more of carbon pumping will take place. That is why we are saying that at least don't uproot it, let it be there, and prune it or cut it.
Okay, Prabhu. Yeah, thank you very much. And my other question is to Vishnunam Das Prabhu. So Prabhuji said, like, we don't have to remove any thorny plants or anything. So that brings to a question like what do we need to do then? Like, if you don't have to do anything, we have to leave the soil like that so that it regenerates. But like that may take a lot of time. But in the meantime, a question may be arise like how do people live then? Like, I mean, if they don't have to do this agriculture or tilling of soil or produce food grains or anything, then how do people live then?
No. Our point regarding not doing anything was not disturbing what is happening naturally. But if you want to throw seeds for your vegetables, your grains, that is no problem. You can certainly throw those seeds, but it should be with minimum disturbance, and it should ensure that the 4 ecosystems are followed. That is only message. We are not against growing our food, but as you also pointed out that how much time will it take, then we will be amazed to see the speed with which nature works. We have been trying since ages to produce healthy food, but we have only created an opposite picture. We have not produced healthy food. So now we have to try the nature's way and try to see how fast nature supports us if we support the nature and cooperate with the nature. But in the interim, this is a transition phase, so we can certainly grow our things, but not compromising on the ecosystems. That is the only thing. As Ajit Prabhu was also explaining, if you want to grow potatoes, then don't only grow potatoes, grow other vegetables, make it a diverse crop, so that the photosynthetic capacity increases, photosynthetic rate increases, the biology in the soil increases. Those decisions has to come in. But again, if you keep continuing to monoculture cropping, then you will achieve the same end result.
Yes, Prabhu.
Dr. Shikumar wants to add anything?
It is true. You have told. That is, whatever biodiversity has come on its own on the land, that you don't remove. That is the message what Vishnunam Prabhu do. You can grow your plants in between, but whatever has come on its own is actually the pioneer plants proceeding in the path of succession. Don't disturb that. That is what is meant by, see, what happens is when you see a thorny plant, you are employing someone or cutting it. No, that labor, please avoid. You can prune it, but don't remove from the roots.
What benefit it will have? To have a thorny plant on your plot, what benefit it will have? I can share. See, initially on our farm, we planted 1,000 trees on all periphery, on the all boundary walls. We planned to plant 1,000 trees, and we brought the saplings and we did hard work of digging the holes and putting the plants in it. But not even 2% survived. Most of them actually could not survive very well, because we had little less water and heat was more, or some many challenges. And one of the challenge was more that our cows, actually we moved from one area to other area, and they started eating the plants and the bark. So then we saw naturally from all the thorns and bushes, all the cactus or the berries and all the shrubs, there is a naturally desired tree which we are desiring, like neem or the ardu or the whatever moringa. They are coming up naturally with the nature's way. So then we saw that this is naturally protected by the thorns as well. I don't have to protect it. Then what we had to do to protect the trees, any tree which we planted, we had to cover it with the tree guards, because the animals should not eat it and so many things.
Correct.
So these trees are naturally coming without watering, and they're having natural protection of these thorns. So thorns should not be seen it as a, some waste or something bad to our land. Actually, it is giving space to the other better species. So it is a succession that thorns will come initially, they will give space, they will increase fertility, gather a lot of water around it, and then some seeds will be dropped in that thorn, and from that thorny bush, naturally some better tree like neem or mango or moringa will come up. So that is what we observed. And so we stopped actually cutting all the thorns on our farm, and we are seeing now it has become good hub for the trees and birds, and many organisms have increased. A lot of birds have increased after we came on this area, and a lot of trees have increased. Like when we see the Google map view, within 5-6 years we are seeing it is so much green.
Yes, Prabhu. Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah. I'm done, Prabhu.
Yeah, thank you, Prabhu. The next question goes, it comes from Mahipala Govinda, Prabhu. Yes, Prabhu, please go ahead with your question.
Yeah, Hare Krishna to all the speakers. So in one of the slides, there was mention of the younger generation leaving farming and other related activities. So I just wanted to ask, like I am one of those type of younger generations who has been born and brought up in a city life and has land in his village, but there is less or no encouragement with respect to me going back to my place and starting this organic or natural farming or trying to rejuvenate the natural things. So with respect to that thing, for a person who has no encouragement with respect to starting or trying to change the way things are being done, and who has no prior knowledge or hand holding, how can such a kind of person proceed with respect to going back to his land and trying to start at a smaller level first and then spreading it towards whatever land mass he has? The initial hand holding or whatever knowledge is required for a person who has zero information. So if you can add something with respect to us, some guidance or what should be done.
Ajit Prabhu, you only told that.
Yes. What is your purpose? That is actually first thing we have to clear it out, because in our holistic decision, we take all the viewpoints. So one of that is what is that? What the quality of life, what you want to live, what exactly you want to achieve by going to the farming. Do we want to earn lakhs of rupees, or we want to have, what exactly is our aim? If your aim is clear in what you want to do, what do you want to achieve? Do you really want to achieve the goal of having healthy air, clean water to drink, healthy vegetables and fruits, and peaceful atmosphere to live, then it is very, what do you say, best to go in this field and do something more. But our aim, suppose, is like most of the people who they come to visit our farm after attending workshop or just to be inquisitive, usually they are inspired by some YouTube video which is saying that earn say 10 lakh rupees per month or something like that. So when they come and they talk to us, then we see that actually they're not having any interest in having a better quality of life. They are only having interest in that YouTube video which was saying about earning lakhs of rupees per month. So that with that aim, if we are going to join the farming, then actually it is not the right field. Whatever we are doing currently, let it continue, earn with that own profession what we have. But farming, if you are joining, then it has to be your purpose, why you want to join. First thing. So if your purpose is right, the purpose is to actually get this quality of life, then sure you can start with, say, whatever land you have from your ancestors and whatever, you can surely start with that.
And follow the principles that has been cited here.
Anything you want to, anything you want to ask in this regard?
So if we can, is it possible to have a detailed conversation, maybe, but if not possible in this class, after?
Yes, surely. You can contact the host. He will arrange for the meeting with Ajit Prabhu or whoever you want to talk to.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prabhu. This is all the questions as of now. I'm not seeing any raised hands today more. And now, again, like next week, again we will join. Next week will be the topic on about the real potential of cow's milk. And that is on 15th May 2021, and the next day, that is on 16th May, the functions of cows. So on these two topics will be covered by our Dr. Sri Kumar Prabhu and Dr. Sri Kala Mataji. Yeah, so at the same time, if still, like, if anyone are having any questions related to this session, they can write an email to the speakers, like help@dirttosoil.org. Okay, Hare Krishna. So yeah, so we will end up this session for today, and thank you very much. We sincerely thank our speakers, His Grace Vishnunam Prabhu. He is our cow minister of our ISKCON, and our Ajit Prabhu and Abhishek Prabhu. They both sincerely serving in Agarwal Organic Farm at Jaipur. And all, of course, our main speakers, Dr. Sri Kumar Prabhu. Thank you very much, Prabhu. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. All praise to Srila Prabhupada. Sarve Jana Sukhino Bhavantu.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.